Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the results of the Industrial Revolution, really the big political and economic result, which is the divide between people that believe in capitalism and people that believe in communism. Now, our focus right now is going to be capitalism because out of capitalism and Adam Smith's theories comes Marxism slash communism slash socialism. And we'll get into it a little deeper when we get into that part, which is going to be the next section. All right. So we understand that the fundamental problem throughout history is scarcity, and that's unlimited wants and needs with limited resources. We already know that there are three resources: land, labor, capital, and that throughout history, people have used these things to produce different kinds of goods and services. Now, after the Industrial Revolution, there is just this explosion as gotten out of the agricultural age and into mass production and mass food and everything. We're starting to transition over for the next 200 years into the economy that we have now. This Industrial Revolution makes an enormous, it's probably the most important event in all of human history in making everybody better off. But it does have a downside. And the downside is there's some considerable inequality. A lot of people are moved out of abject poverty, but there's still this significant divide between the idea of the haves and the have-nots. And so history has started to uh, look at this and say, okay, well, how do we make everyone in society better off? Basically, you start to get into the question of what is the best way to make people overall more prosperous, so much like well off, better off, so they're not worried about where they're going to get their next meal or the next place to stay and all this. And you start to see studies that try to figure out how to make humans better off. Adam Smith's one of the first people to deal with this. And Adam Smith is the father of capitalism. Remember, capitalism is the idea that private people should determine how land, labor, and capital are distributed. All these things should be private. The government should have little say in determining what happens to land, labor, and capital. That's what capitalism is at its basic essence. And he writes a book called The Wealth of Nations, which is trying to explain why capitalism is actually good. And there's four essentially ideas around the idea of capitalism. One, you need to have private property, which is kind of duh. Number two, your markets must be free. Now, what is a market? Because most people, when they think about markets, they think of a building. No, a market is any place, physical or virtual, where buyers and sellers make an exchange. Anywhere, online, in society, and markets exist for almost everything. So if you go to the job and you get a wage, that is a market. The market is for you and your labor. Obviously, if you go to a store and buy something, or you go to a baseball game, any of those things are markets. Any place at all where buyers and sellers actually make an exchange is a market. And Adam Smith believed that you should be free to buy or sell whatever you want, and that nobody should be telling you what the price is of that thing or how you should make it or anything like that. He also believed that those markets should expand all over the place and that there should be free trade amongst countries too, because then you'll have access to more land, labor, and capital. And that it's better off that you trade with people instead of fight and take their things. Because remember, if you're not fighting with another country, then you're buying and selling from them. And both parties are probably better off not fighting, instead trading. Finally, the idea of the price system. Now, Adam Smith is saying if you want to change human behavior, you got to pay attention to how much something is worth: land, labor, and capital. So he comes up with the concept that prices actually dictate how people are going to behave. And the more you pay attention to this, the more you understand how the world works. So people, react to prices already. And he just kind of breaks it down. And he says, look, when prices are really low, buyers are going to buy more, sellers are going to make less, right? I mean, it's a signal. When the price is low, buyers are like, I want more of that stuff. When the price is low, sellers are like, I'm not going to even get my money's worth, so why would I make more? And eventually you get to where the value of something is actually at. He also said that at high prices, because we always hear like high prices are bad. Well, high prices are bad for one half of that market. All right. A high price to a buyer is a signal like stop buying so much because I can't afford it. But a seller at a high price, a seller is saying, yes, make as much as I can because I want to make as much money as I can. So if the price of oil is really high, that's a signal to the oil driller, make more oil. Okay. The price of eggs is going up. That's a signal to people that farm chickens, get more eggs. All right. So he believed that this, above all else, is actually what's going to drive people's behaviors, how people look at a price. So in the Wealth of Nations, he's got three theories. One, the concept of productivity. And productivity is how efficiently land, labor, and capital are used to make goods and services. And he said, we can sit down and actually measure and how much it matters to buy that next piece of land or buy that one or hire that one extra worker or buy that one extra piece of a machine. And that all these things actually really do matter. And then we started to get coming out of this idea of productivity, you started to get people actually studying just the act of productivity, not only like businesses, but the act of being productive. And this new science is actually called economics. And economics is the study of how to efficiently use land, labor, and capital to address scarcity. And so when you hear about the study of economics, it's Adam Smith's concept that, hey, maybe we shouldn't just study about business, we should study about how everybody can use land, labor, and capital to deal with scarcity around the world. He comes up with another idea, and that is maybe that the efficient way of doing things isn't that everybody does everything or makes a whole thing. He comes up with the idea of the division of labor. And the division of labor is like in the old days, a worker would make an entire shoe from start to finish. And is that actually the best way to use that worker? They said, actually, if we measure it out, no. Division of labor is that idea that, you take a worker and you put them in different steps of the process. A couple things happen. One, they produce way more, but each of these workers is actually going to specialize in that task, and then production goes up even farther. Like I don't have to hire, if I have 6 workers, just don't have them make a shoe a worker. Actually have those 6 workers make a part of the shoe, and we produce way more shoes. We don't change the number of workers we actually have. This is why Nike, which is in 37 countries around the world, does not have a worker making a shoe. It has 1.2 million workers doing different parts of the shoe process, which allows them to make a whole lot of shoes. So division of labor is the idea of splitting up work into smaller tasks where a worker becomes specialized in one job. Now we saw this in the assembly line in modern times with the tramp doing the boring work, but Adam Smith goes bigger and says that around the world, people specialize into certain tasks. And this allows things to be produced and eventually sold at a much lower price. People don't need to, grow their own chickens anymore or even grow their own food because it's a kind of a waste of resources and takes up a lot of time. Let somebody that specializes in growing food do it and do it so well, they're actually going to get paid a pretty good sum of money for providing food for everybody else while you specialize in something different. The last theory that he had was the invisible hand. And the famous, it is not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, the baker that we expect our dinner, but from regard to their own self-interest. The big thing about the invisible hand is that Adam Smith believed everybody wasn't selfish or greedy, but they were all self-interested. Ultimately, everybody wants to meet their needs first. So he takes a look at this market and understands that both buyers and sellers are inherently self-interested, and they're going to act that way all the time. Sellers are going to want to get something at a high price. Buyers are going to want to buy something at a low price, and that you should probably let them figure out the value of things by having them negotiate the value of something. And in this, what you will get is the invisible hand, which is free markets, if you leave them alone, will naturally create their own price and their own regulations. And people are going to be self-interested. People are going to haggle and say, I want something for this price. And somebody else is going to respond and say, I want something for this price. And eventually, that's actually going to be the true value of something because that's what they're debating that the price of something actually is. And you don't have to worry about something being safe because if the seller actually wants to keep selling that one thing, then you don't need some government telling you exactly how safe something is. The market will actually tell you by the amount of people that keep buying that one product because they wouldn't buy it if it wasn't safe. We use the example of Morelia in Michoacan. I don't know Spanish at all. If I dropped into Morelia and I didn't have my phone or anything, I can't translate. Can I figure out a place to eat food, not get sick, not run out of money, and actually have it taste good? And the answer, according to Adam Smith, is well, yeah, dummy. Where's there a line at the best food stall? Because there's a line at the food stall. You don't need a government telling you what's safe and not safe. If there's a line at the food stall, it's probably pretty good tasting, it's probably safe, and it's probably a reasonable price because there's a lot of food there. And there's a lot of people wanting that food. Okay, that's the invisible hand at work. And if somebody else, like next door, wants to like rob their customers, they need to make better food or make it safer or make it priced less to attract those people. That's the invisible hand at work. Okay. So, the idea of everybody's self-interested. People are always going to try to make more money. Like me at a job, I'm going to try to make more money. People trying to get my money from me when I buy things are going to try to get more money. Eventually, as people keep buying things, good businesses do well. Bad businesses are going to go away. I mean, we have businesses that have died over time. The businesses that were huge, like Kodak, who used to produce film, they're not nearly as big as something like Nvidia, which produces AI chips. This isn't bad; it just is. And over time, markets are going to keep good businesses going, and markets are going to make bad businesses fail. And eventually, you're going to get what you want. The business is going to get what it wants, and everybody is better off. The invisible hand just kind of guides both sides if left alone. So that's what Adam Smith believed in The Wealth of Nations, the idea of productivity, using your resources efficiently, dividing up labor into smaller specialized tasks, even worldwide, and the invisible hand kind of guiding people into what people want, what the prices and values, and how much you should make. There are benefits of capitalism according to people that believe in capitalism. Number one, people understand their own wants and needs better than the government. So the argument is that they should be able to decide what they do with land, labor, and capital because they know what they want. So a capitalist is going to say the government doesn't. The government's going to not really know what you want better than you are. Another thing, people love choice. And under capitalism, people are free to choose what they want to do with their land, labor, and capital. You might not like it, and that person may actually go bankrupt or be poor, but sometimes it's maybe because of the choices they make, not necessarily because somebody else is making those choices for them. Goods and services are usually cheaper in capitalist economies because you get the actual real value of something. Remember, like the price of TVs in the last 50 years has gone straight down. The price of clothing is much cheaper. There are things that are expensive, absolutely. Like, college, which happens to be government, is more expensive. A lot of healthcare, which is regulated by government, is more expensive. But there are goods and services out there that are considerably cheaper as well. It promotes innovation. When you're in a capitalist economy, uh, you're going to try to figure out a way to do things at a cheaper price. You're going to try to find new things that are different and that are going to interest people. And so you're going to actually create greater technology and innovate more. This can have positive and negative effects. It scares a lot of people when there's like a new invention that takes over an industry, like, cars took over horses. And so you don't need as many horses anymore. People freak out over that. Eventually, driverless cars are going to probably take over taxis and Ubers, and people get really freaked out about that. But tractors took over agriculture, and it's not like there's mass unemployment because there's tractors that took over for people using plows. Okay, so that just happens. It also promotes the spread of diverse ideas. When you trade with different groups of people, you have different ideas that come about, and actually, that's where you get a lot of cool innovation. And then you get a place like Northern California that for a long time was just kind of a white Northern California, very rural area, and now you have a diverse Southern Central Mexican culture that is here, and that benefits a lot of people because you get to learn more. And of course, if you speak more than one language, guess what? Your labor is more valuable. It creates wealth, and wealthier countries are better off. This might be controversial, but it's also true that capitalist countries are wealthier on average, and wealthier countries are simply better off for their citizens. If you are asked, where do you want to live? And the answer is going to be invariably a capitalist country. Couple of like ideas um, about capitalism and the role of government, according to Adam Smith. And the like, understand that Adam Smith did not believe that government should not be a part of deciding everything about resources. His argument was not that like something known as laissez-faire. Laissez-faire free market is like the government is not in it at all. And that's what it was like in the Industrial Revolution's early years before you had like any safety laws. It was just a wild, wild west, and people abused the heck out of the system. And he never believed that, but he also believed something else. Governments are ran by people, and those people are going to be self interested just like anybody else. So if the government gets too big, all the government's going to do is benefit a certain group of people that are like themselves. And that's not how government is supposed to be. Government is supposed to do some fundamental things with the people. But again, governments are run by people, and so they will probably take resources and benefit those people more than everyone. So, what did Adam Smith believe the government should do? Number one, defend the country from foreign attacks. That one's easy. You should have a military, and it should protect your country. Number two, universal education. People that are better educated make better choices, and they are more efficient with their resources. They will live longer, they will be happier, they will innovate more. So we want people to be educated. Number three, build stuff that helps create other stuff. So bridges, roads, power grids, mass transit, things that are actually going to help us build more things. If you're going to, if we have an area of town that has a bunch of businesses, we probably want to get good roads that go from homes to those businesses. If we have a bunch of area, if we have an area that has a bunch of stores, let's get good roads that go from homes to those stores, that kind of thing. And then ultimately protect private property rights and any contracts. Remember that if you believe in private property, then the government needs to make sure that private property is protected by somebody else. You can't just have somebody with more guns or stronger take that private property. That's not how it's supposed to work. So government does belong in a capitalist economy, but just in the idea of Adam Smith, it's very limited in what it actually can do. Remember, there's a reason why the overall gross domestic product, the overall wealth of the world, suddenly just blew up after the Industrial Revolution because the world was so much better off. And we can do what's known as GDP per capita. This is the wealth of an average citizen. If you know, places with capitalist economies do so much better. And if you get into this idea of like, well, yeah, they took like empires took a bunch of land, colonies existed everywhere, including Africa. And Africa did not get capitalist systems until much later. I mean, East Asia and China was definitely an imperialist power, but they are not nearly as better off as places in Western Europe or the Western offshoot places like the United States, Canada, and Australia. So places that actually accepted more capitalist economies actually do better. And then you start looking over time, and as more countries became more capitalist, you started seeing people, the percentage of the population in extreme poverty. There's a connection between the introduction of capitalism and people that are in poverty. There are just not nearly as many people as there were in poverty. Child mortality just went off a cliff after the Industrial Revolution because people were so much better off. You used to have upwards of 50 to 60% of children under the age of 15 used to be dead. And then all of a sudden, the Industrial Revolution kicks in, capitalism kicks in, innovation kicks in. And now notice the lowest mortality rates are in Iceland, Finland, Norway, Japan, and Slovenia. These are all capitalist economies. And finally, this is life expectancy. This is the ultimate proof that places that engage in freer markets, democracies, capitalist economies, they simply did better because for so long you had life expectancy of all these places at basically 30 to 35 years old. And then when you look in and you start seeing what places actually got better off quicker, you know, taking a country over doesn't make your life expectancy better. It's if your people overall are just having a better standard of living. And what we find is places that had capitalist economies quicker seem to do better off than places that did not. All right. Now, are there problems with capitalist systems? There are. And a couple of guys named Karl Marx and Frederick Engels were walking around Manchester in England and noticed things about capitalism that were very problematic. And this is going to lead us to our next section, which is going to be one of the responses to the Industrial Revolution and capitalism.